I don't know what's taking so long, but my YouTube wants to escalate. Slide. Come on, chat bot. Excuse me. Why dost thou, daughter, have to wake me up so early? Huh? Why? Why douse my daughter? Oops. Spelled cannabis wrong. Go back up. Cannabis. Okay. All right. That's my stream bot. I'm having technical difficulties this morning. Are you mad because I started my live before I started you, or what? You just mad? Too early in the morning, you mad? I know. I'm mad at myself too. It's way too early. 7:30. Wow. Yes, I need to wake up. We loaded and we don't even know. Why is that song gonna be stuck in my head now? Glamorous. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, it is SparkzAlot, and today is the 20-something. No, for real, let me see what day it is. Today is the 22nd. 6 more days until my birthday. Yay! 6 more days until I celebrate the day of my birth, which happened many moons ago. Many moons ago, I was born. Many moons. What's going on, Mid-Coast? Mid-Coast grower is in the building. Is my camera not working? Let me see how I got this set up. Pew, live views, TVMA, donations. Dang, this ain't got nothing on it. Oh, yes, because it's the cannabis news thing. Oh, yes, I forgot. Tim S. Oh, excuse me. I'm trying to wake up, I promise. I don't know what's going on. Hey, Faircast Love in the building. What up, mama? What's up, mama? Sorry, guys, I'm trying to wake my butt up. Is my camera working this morning? Hi, guys. SparkzAlot, your host of Cannabis News with SparkzAlot. Anyways. Gonna drink my coffee. Now, for real, before we start the news up, I guess we should smoke, right? We should medicate. For all of you guys and gals that slept on your back wrong, like I did last night, I don't know what the hell. I feel like I slept on a camel's back. Last night, just all lumped up. Anyways, I got my coffee in me. I'm usually not up this early in the morning. My daughter started band. Well, she was in band last year, but this year she wanted to get into jazz band, which is a little bit more advanced. So, she's got to get up earlier to school to go to practice before school and after school because she wants to learn how to play. Last year she played the tuba. This year she wants to play the tuba alongside the trombone. She wants to play the trombone as well. So 2 instruments. I don't know how difficult that is because I'm not a musician, but anything that keeps your time occupied and busy. And hey, if you want to do it because you can do anything you want to, little princess. So, yeah, I'll get up early and drop you off at school so you can practice your musics. Get it big, shawty. My daughter, she's crazy. Anyways, she's the reason why I'm up this damn early and I don't understand it. I played the clarinet, says Denise. What? That's what's up. Slept on the gator's back. Hey, I feel like I slept on one of them Chinese beds with all the strings. I mean, with all the damn. All the nails. I feel like I slept on a bed of nails. That's what I feel like. No. What up? No. Bed of nails. Yes, that's what I feel like. Cheers, guys. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. Okay, for real, I wasn't ready. That almost hurt. Anyways, let's go over here and see if I can find, okay, web browser, inbox. I need to go over here to my mailbox. Delete this right here because I don't want to see it. All right, let's get over here. Web browser. Can you see what I see? Can you see what I see? You can. So we're gonna go over here. Once again, this is Cannabis News with SparkzAlot. Today is August 22nd, 6 days away from my birthday. Yay! 6 days away from my birthday. Yay! You know what? I usually don't do anything on my birthday, but this year, the one year that I want to do something, I just don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. It's been a slow week at work. So, I think this week's check is going to cover my bills. And everything will be all fine and dandy. But one of my favorite singers in the whole entire galaxy is going to be in Vegas. And I've never seen her before in concert. I don't know how many times she will continue to be in concert in the future. And I'm kind of low-key mad. Right now I'm weighing on myself. I'm like, pay this light bill or go see Guapole. I don't know what I'm going to do, guys. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. We'll see. Maybe I can find a way to budget it into my finances to go see Guapole. If you guys don't know who Guapole is, maybe you should Google her. It's a very talented very talented female artist. She's got a very harmonious, beautiful voice. Anyways, results, focus, share, stock price, blah, blah, blah. Time to share what's transpiring with shares in the Southern Company. Why investors should trade cautiously with Hexo stock. The retail landscape of contemporary Australia. Canopy growth stock is finally ready to make a comeback. This was today. Marijuana legalization, next domino may be about to fall. On the NASDAQ, Aurora Cannabis, Aurora, Canopy and Aurora. 2 businesses that have been in the mail. I mean, not in the mail, the news a lot. Popped in to say hi. Sparks in chat says, no, bro. What up? No, bro. The yes, bro. Denise says, cleaning my house, so keep me company in the background, guy. Summertime is downtime for a lot of occupants, and politicians is no exception. Capitol Hill adjourned August recess, state's government. Right now, movement is quietly gathering steam on one southeastern site, not getting much attention in the media, blah, blah, blah. Florida could be on the road. Y'all tuck your chains in. Tuck your chains, hide your wallets, take off them rollies, because Debo is in the building. Debo. Let's see. Developments, quiet, Florida could be on the verge of legalizing marijuana more often. It's the national news. It's one of the bizarre stories involving a Florida man or woman, a gator attack, or maybe some type of altercation at a Publix grocery store. But this month, the Florida headline shows some positive momentum for pro-legalization advocates, and none other than Rolling Stone magazine had a big feature on it this week. So yeah, hopefully California, not California, what are we talking about? Florida, Floridians. Hopefully Floridians will be able to consume cannabis here pretty soon. Hey everybody, we're all gonna get laid! Grandpa, back in the 1930s when one Florida man committed a gruesome murder and the Tampa police goaded. Roll up in the club. All eyes on me. Alright. All eyes on me. Mr. J Rock in the motherfucking house. Let's see. Back in the 30s, when one Florida man committed a gruesome murder and the Tampa police scapegoated marijuana cigarettes for it, the case was used to push marijuana prohibition nationwide. See that in the 30s? A guy killed somebody and it was like, it's because of them marijuana cigarettes. Y'all see it right there. That's what it says. I can't believe it, man. That's that there reefer madness craziness. You're going to smoke the tweeds and then you'll go run people over in your car and you'll be like, oh, when did they put that speed bump there? I don't even know. Most recently, when voters were about to vote on medical marijuana ballot initiative in 2016, the Florida Sheriff's Association lobbied it. The billionaire founder and CEO of the Las Vegas Sands, Sheldon Anderson, also blocked previous medical marijuana initiatives. Is that right? Sheldon Anderson, you sly dog, you. It's funny. This guy right here, Sheldon Anderson of the Las Vegas Sands Corporation. He's a very unique individual, man. Very sneaky guy. I low-key think he had something to do with the 1 October incident here in Nevada a few years back. But that's just my guess, my assumption. And you know, when I make assumptions, I make an ass out of me and that person. So maybe Sheldon is an ass. I don't know. Anyways, let's not get sidetracked here, ladies and gentlemen. Florida has come a long way thanks to advocates like Ricky Williams, the former running back of the Miami Dolphins, who used cannabis to manage pain and still speaks at Florida cannabis conferences. That is what's up. So if you're close to Florida, if you know somebody in Florida, if you have a loved one in Florida, friend, family, whatever, and they could benefit from the use of cannabis, make sure they get out and they read their legislation about the upcoming the upcoming bills that are going to be on their ballot to vote in laws for their state. Make sure you read that shit carefully, because some states, Nevada included, they just want to get it legalized and they're not reading they're not reading their bills properly. So you pass something that you don't think you wanted to pass in the first place. I got to go to work. Money, pain. Money. Stoney's going to work. Grandpa, I thought you retired. Did you not retire, Grandpa? Anyways, if you guys want to read that story, I just put the link in the article. The article link in the chat room. Sorry, I was talking too fast there for a minute. Talking too fast, guys. Shout out to the 14 people watching this beautiful morning. It is Thursday, people. We have got over the hump. The weekend is one day away. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy. 1 day away. The weekend. I've been off for the last 2 days, sitting at home, twiddling my thumbs, trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. I'm just trying. I know what I want to do with my life. I want to live. Let's go back to see if we can find a different cannabis news story. But wait, there's more in the process. Let's smoke a bowl. Take a rip. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. my gosh. Twisted Sister. Robert Blake, what's going on, man? Thank you for being here. So, Aurora Cannabis, Canopy Growth Group. The first marijuana extraction arrests are made in Marshall County. What? I don't know where Marshall County is, but we sure will find out here pretty soon. Before I get too far off into this thing, been on 15 minutes. I ain't mentioned the stream boss. Let's turn this off for a second, guy. Turn it off. If you notice up in the top left-hand corner of your screen, ladies and gentlemen, there is a name. The name is White Feather Girl. White Feather Girl is the stream boss right now. Excuse me. That means they get bragging rights. They get to be in all my live streams until they're knocked off of the stream boss pedestal up there. So, how do they lose their points, you might ask? They lose their points every time we get a subscriber or anytime a donation is made to the show. Their points will get knocked down. New subscribers and donations or donors have the chance to knock the stream boss off depending on when their subscription or donation is made. Now, every subscription is worth 420 points, and every donation is worth, I think it's dollars to dollars or something like that. So if you donate $1, you will knock 100 points off of the stream boss up there, and you may have your chance to take the stream boss. Excuse me. So if you ever see the stream boss has 100 points up there and you want to be the stream boss, you can donate $1 and you'll knock them off. I think it'll actually be $1.01 that you'd have to donate, something of that nature. But yes, anyways, shout out to White Feather Girl. Thank you for being a part of the stream. Without further ado, let's get back into this mail because, this news. What it do, GAO? Probably tell Sparks who the stream boss is. Oh, am I taking my car out this weekend? No, I'm not taking my car out this weekend. I'm not going anywhere this weekend. I'll probably be at work, to be honest with you. But, excuse me. Guapole, my favorite artist, my favorite female artist, is going to be in Vegas. And I want to go see her, but I don't know. We'll see. First marijuana THC extraction arrest made in Marshall County. Look, somebody was making them. Look at all them damn carts this fool got busted with. Selling them underground carts. Them look like some dank vapes somebody made in their basement and then got ready to sell the streets. Marshall County. This is in Grant, Alabama. Alabama knows how to party. Anyways, the sheriff announced as a first of its kind drug bust in Marshall County. Words. So you guys have never had Mota. This nigga got baggies. Got the nectar collector over here, scale, hunting rifle, whole bunch of doobies. That's funny that they took like all the doobies out of the ashtray and they brought that as evidence too. Like, which policeman had the job? Hey, yo, Simmons, you pick all the marijuana roaches out that ashtray over there and make sure you wash your hands when you get done because you're going to smell like ashtray. Damn sick marijuana cigarette butt roaches right there. That's crazy. So, let this be a lesson, guys. Don't leave your doobies in the ashtray. Eat them shits or throw them away. Flush them down the toilet because they will dig in your ashtray and bring their roach to court. Like, Your Honor, this is the roach I found in the defendant's cigarette ashtray. It was on the bottom of, it was on the bottom of like 6 million cigarettes, but it was there. It was there. Get the roaches. I know that's right. That's fucked up. Ain't that messed up, Robert? It's like 15, 20, 30 roaches right there. Anyways, them cartridges right there. Oh my gosh. So yeah, if you're buying cartridges off the street, I haven't even looked at this story all the way. But what I do think, and what I know, because I've seen it done, like I've seen people make these carts to sell on the market, and it's crazy. It's like the man that cuts up cocaine. You don't know what the hell he's putting in that cocaine. Never done cocaine in my life. I do not promote any type of illicit drug use to anybody out there. I'm not a doctor. I don't have the license to prescribe drugs. So, with that being said, if you're buying anything off the streets, guys, make sure you know what you're putting in your body. For all you know, you could be smoking Crisco and them dank vapes. Crisco and terpenes. I can go get some Pineapple Express terpenes and some Crisco and mix it up, boy, and be just carting it up. Gallon of Crisco costs what, $3, $4, $5? A thing of terpenes, get you some cartridges. Let me stop because I don't need anybody out there trying to figure out how to do this on their own. Anyway, Chosen is in the building. What's going on, man? Shout out to the 9 in the chat room holding it down. We went from 14 to 9. I seem to lose viewers in the 5s. They leave it in sets of 5s. There's 2 couples and then the thumb. Designated driver or something. I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Just coming from Preservatives King SparkzAlot. You know what? I eat healthy, so be quiet. Not everybody can eat like Whole Foods all the damn time. Anyways, let's go finish reading this story over here. Marshall County deputies went to an address, Old Union Road. I'm gonna take my $5 to Old Union Road and I'm gonna get me a card so I can smoke some more. I'm just playing. Anyways, Tuesday, Marshall County deputies went to an address on Old Union Road in Grant to serve a medical pickup. To serve a medical pickup on someone for substance abuse. Medical pickup for substance abuse. Deputies say when they arrived, there was an overwhelming odor of raw marijuana. Okay, wait a minute, time out. There was an overwhelming odor of raw. Do you guys read? Are you reading this with me? Raw marijuana. Boy, the way they describe cannabis sometimes just knocks me silly, man. So it was raw compared to being cooked, like, so it wasn't edible. Was it growing marijuana? Was it just the bag? Somebody had that gas. Somebody had that pressure. Somebody had that loud. And you could smell it. Anyways, police got there. They smelled the reefers, man. They smelled the weeds in the house. They were like, hey. They found the indoor grow operation in the bedroom. And approximately 12 marijuana plants were recovered. Approximately. Y'all don't know how to count? I mean, shit, a number as low as 12. Somebody couldn't count to 13 or 15 or 10. What the hell is approximately 12 plants? All right. Deputies say a further search of the residence revealed offenders were extracting THC from raw marijuana, which qualifies as manufacturing case in Alabama. Yes, that's a fucking felony. You can get fed time for that shit. Manufacturing THC. They're extracting THC from raw marijuana. To our knowledge, this is the first case of this type in Marshall County history, Chief Deputy Steve Guthrie said in a news release. They seized components used to manufacture marijuana, scales, pipes, and 2 firearms. What about the roaches, man? You guys didn't say nothing about the roaches. Okay, I see 2 scales. Oh, there goes the other firearm down there. You can barely even see it, but I see the barrel of the gun. I'm like, where's the other barrel at? I don't see another gun. Anyways, yes, ma'am. 3 people were arrested at the time. Heather Brook, 27 of Grant, Gerald Geckles, 24 of Guntersville, and Andrew Register, 24 of Florida, were all charged with first-degree manufacturing, first-degree unlawful possession of the cannabis, and Don't forget to throw this shit in there. They had the drug paraphernalias. You know what? Why don't you arrest the stores for selling the drug paraphernalias? If you arrest all them folks, or better yet, if you let them don't sell it no more, stop selling paraphernalia stuff. That's like entrapment, man. You put this shit out there for us to buy, then when we buy it, you put us in jail for having paraphernalias. I don't understand it. I think it's just another fancy fucking way for y'all to give us a ticket in the courtroom. More money, more money, more money. Anyways, if you want to read this story, I don't know if I put the link in the chat room or not yet, but here it is. It's not a long story. I mean, I just read the whole thing, I think. I might have skipped one piece of a paragraph. But if you want to read it, if you want to watch the video, excuse me, this appears to be in Alabama. If you know anybody in Alabama, Alabama knows how to party, man. Alabama knows how to party. The roles of CBD and THC in medicinal cannabis, hemp products for humans, animals of fast-growing markets. Cannabis corner, marijuana versus cancer. The evidence is growing. Could CBD and hemp products cause you to lose your jobs? Yes, they can. They might not be tested properly, and you might end up getting more THC than expected in a product to cause you to fail a drug test. So, why are dozens of teens getting sick after vaping? This has been in the news a lot lately. I don't know if any of you guys are paying attention, or if you know anybody, if you got nieces or nephews or children, or hopefully not grandchildren, but if you do, hey, get them off the vapes, because the vapes are not the business, man. Vaping has sent nearly 100 people, mostly teens and young adults, to the hospital with lung illnesses in the last couple of weeks. This story is taken or written in somewhere. As soon as I find out, I'll let you guys know. Anyway, the CDC is investigating 94 possible cases of severe lung illness associated with vaping, which have been reported in 14 states as of August 17th. It's unclear what's causing the illness, or even if there's a link between patients' symptoms and the kinds of products they use, but the patients have reported vaping various substances, including nicotine and the cannabises. Some of the patients says they bought their e-cigarettes product on the street. Big mistake, son. Big mistake. Anyways, what could be harming these young people, these 100+ people? Based on limited information, the most likely explanation is that of a toxic chemical in the electronic cigarette is causing a severe reactive inflammatory response in the patient's lungs, said Dr. Michael Siegel, a professor of community health sciences at Boston University School of Public Health. If that's the case, this chemically induced lung injury could lead to several lung conditions. One condition known as acute respiratory distress syndrome, or ARDS. This has been associated with the inhalation of toxic fumes. Another condition is chemical pneumonitis, or inflammation of the lungs that is caused by inhaling irritants, Siegel told Life Science. It's very unlikely that this is being caused purely by nicotine-containing e-liquids, he added. Rather, the reaction is probably caused by a contaminant that is present in certain formulations of cannabis products sold for vaping, possibly on the streets, he said. What up, Dab? Dab is in the building. So, yeah. You don't know if the streets are cutting your vape cartridge with baby oil, Crisco, lard. Who knows what they putting in that shit? Y'all smoking it. And it might taste good. You know why it tastes good? It tastes good because they knew it tastes like shit in the first place, so they added some terpenes to it to make it bearable. So, please watch what you're buying on the streets. This is a fairly long story. So if you guys want to finish reading it, I will put the link in the chat room so you can go check it out yourself. I don't want to sign up for you during weekly email because I copied your link address. Can you close that? Oh shit, look at this. For example, pneumonitis. Oh gosh, where's Google at? Look up this word so I can figure out how to pronounce it properly. I want to say that's pneumonitis. I could be so freaking wrong. Where is... Oh, maybe they don't have a proper pronunciation of the word in the dictionary because it's a fairly young word. Oh, wait. Oh, Wikipedia. Pneumonitis. Let's see if I got this right. Oh, they don't have a pronunciation of it. I can't listen to it. Damn it. Anyways, I would imagine that's what that's called. Wait, let me see if there's a breakdown. Where's the... Nope. It is distinguished from pneumonia on the basis of the causation as well as its manifestation, since pneumonia can be described as pneumonitis combined with consolidation of exudation of lung tissue affected with microorganisms. Oh my gosh. Anyways, I would assume that's how you say this is pneumonitis. If I'm wrong, then stone me. I mean, don't stone me, but get me stoned. Preferably by dabbing some good shit. Anyways, for example, pneumonitis has been linked to the practice of dabbing or inhalation of butane hash oil, a concentrated form of cannabis that contains high level of the drug's active compound THC. Heating butane hash oil to high temperatures may result in the formation of chemicals that are toxic to the lungs, according to a report published in the Journal of Respiratory Medical Case Reports last January. So, please, stop taking them hot-ass dabs. How hot is too hot? We should go read this medicine case report and see if they have a temperature in there. So I don't take no hot-ass dabs because I don't need any lung. I already have asthma. I don't need any extra lung issues. No, I don't want Live Science to know where I'm at. Why you want to know my location? Huh? Why? Other experts say that non-cannabis e-cigarettes that contain nicotine instead of THC could also cause such reactions. A group of researchers recently found that nicotine releases potentially harmful enzymes, molecules that have a role in breaking down proteins in the body into the lungs. Those researchers published their results on August 2nd in the American Journal of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine. So, there are a couple articles. There's studies that have been done within the past couple of months or so that have found out that you don't need to vape, man. Or you shouldn't vape. Advising you not to vape if you have any young people or just people in general that are buying those nasty ass carts off the street. If you don't know where it's coming from, please don't spend your hard-earned money on no BS because it'd be like paying to go to the hospital just to go to the hospital. That's what you're doing. You're paying to put yourself in the hospital. Heat and pressure, no solids. That's what's up, happy guys. Shout out to the rosin heads out there pressing their own. Defense Department officials, all CBD products are forbidden to troops. So, if you know anybody in the military, I don't know why I keep trying to open this in a new tab. It's going to open in a new tab when I click open anyway. We like low temp dabs, solventless resin, solventless rosin. All right, this is from military.com, and they are officially putting their stamp on CBD products being a no-no if you're in the military, it appears. That's what the headlines is for. As the military services each roll out new policies regarding hemp-derived products like cannabidiol or CBD, the Defense Department is not mincing words. It's completely forbidden for use by any service member in any of the services at this point in time, says Patricia Deuster, Deuster? Is your last name really fucking Deuster? Man. Her last name shit. I'm just playing. Deuster. Finna go drop with Patricia Deuster. Anyway, she's the director of Human Performance Laboratory and at the Uniform Services University of Health Sciences in Bethesda, Maryland. Dang, that's a mouthful. Whew, cottonmouth. The warning, along with policies issued recently by the Air Force, Coast Guard, and Department of the Navy, comes as CBD is becoming increasingly ubiquitous across the country in many forms, from coffee additives and vaping liquids to tinctures, candies, and other foods, carrying compromises of health. Wait. Carrying promises, not compromises. I don't know why I said compromises. Maybe because the C right there, and I don't know. Carrying promises of health benefits ranging from pain and anxiety relief to sleeping aids and inflammation reduction. Anyways, if you guys want to read the rest of this story, there goes the link in the chat room. The troops, the government says no CBD products. Leave that shit to the colored folks and let them fuck up their life. I don't know what's going on with the governments. It's crazy. They can create these drugs. I mean, the government didn't create CBD, so to speak, but they can create drugs and then they ban them. I don't understand it. This is Earth. You are taking the right away from people. This is a natural anyways. I'm not going to voice my disgust for the government right now. So you're going to tell me, I guess that's active members, though. They said, I guess if you go over there, you come back with PTSD and you want some CBD products in your life, you'd have to be out of the military, like discharged or something of that nature. I don't know. It's crazy. Hey, I say give everybody on the front line a blunt. Let them get high as they can because, hey, if you're on the front line, or if you're anywhere in there, give everybody a blunt. If you're getting ready to jump out of a fucking helicopter or airplane with a damn parachute strapped to your back, I think you need a blunt because, hey, that's going to be some crazy stuff you're getting ready to do. If you're in the service and you're fighting to protect our country, I think you should be able to roll up a blunt. Shit, I think you should be able to do a dab while doing a dab after you just killed the bad guy if you want to. Shit. Anyways, sorry. Got a little sidetracked there. It's enough of voicing my opinion. CBD cocktails and holistic happenings this week. CBS New York. What? So, it's fine for the pet businesses and all these other businesses popping up, pushing CBD products down everybody's throat. Because you know what trips me out is, okay, so the CBD health and wellness, the pet products, like, you would almost think that the health industry would have been some of the first people to like put out CBD products, and the pet industry would be some of the first people to put out these pet products. But it's not necessarily the case. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, people that have had no dealings with any type of CBD, any type of cannabis in their entire life, let alone pet products or beauty products, whatever, anything, 90% of the stuff that's getting produced by cannabis or CBD nowadays is being touched by people that have never used cannabis or CBD in their whole entire life. Just all of a sudden, now it's a money thing, and all of a sudden they are jumping out of the woodworks to open up businesses and open up this and open up that. And it's like, oh, I just feel a need to close the gap or there's a void out there that I need to fill with my pet product. Man, look, 5 months ago, you was on the no cannabis train. You was on the this train or that train. You didn't even know what CBD was. Now all of a sudden, you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars each year and you're living in big fancy houses, and you shun upon all the people that are still incarcerated for the same damn drug. It's ridiculous. Big Mike 420 Lifestyle in the building. What's going on, man? Gromy's homies in the building as well. Thank you guys for coming through. Shout out to everybody in the chat room. Let me give you guys some credits for hanging out with SparkzAlot. If I can get over here and and then type in my box instead of typing in my, or just pushing buttons in my email. Hagerstown, 420 in the building. iPoints add 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 11 million credits to those in the chat. Oh, I forgot to put plus viewership. Sorry guys, iPoints add plus viewers. That's all the people that are typing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Bam! If you're not typing, if you're just in here being a voyeur in the background, it's not going to give you any credits because you have not been active in the chat room. It gives people credits that are actively active in the chat room. Anyways, let's go back over here. What was I talking about? I was talking about CBD for a minute, and then, oh yeah, CBD cocktail story. I don't know what this is. Let's go see. Meanwhile, in the boardroom, CBD salts and minerals want to up your game when it comes to health and wellness. From a CBD information session to a holistic health seminar, there's plenty to do when it comes to holistic activities to enrich your week. Here's a rundown. If you want to have CBD in cocktails, I don't even know where this is. What is this? New York? If you live in New York and you want to go have CBD cocktails, or CBD and cocktails, and you're anywhere near the Lizzie King's Parlor on 75th Ave, 75A, 5th Avenue. What's up with the A's? You know, I sent somebody some mail the other day, and they had a letter next to a number before a name similar to this. Y'all got that many streets in New York, you got to put numbers after the names, the letters. I'm lost. 75A, 5th Ave. I was finna say 75th Avenue, and then it said 5th Ave. 75A, 5th, is there like a 75Z, 5th Avenue too? I don't even know. Anyways, it's free to go. You can come join them for CBDs and cocktails. Wait, that shit was yesterday. I'm sorry. Excuse me, dude. Unless you can go back to the future, I guess you can't go to the CBD and cocktail thing. Sorry, guys, scratch that. I think that's what we came to this page for, was the CBD cocktail thing. And it was yesterday, so I'm a little bit behind. Let's just close this out. Don't tell nobody. What's with the credits, Grow Me Homie says? If you gotta ask how much it is, you probably don't need it. No, I'm just playing. The credits are so you can do stuff in the chat room, and it's kind of for like bragging rights and stuff like that. You can pass around blunts and dabs and give people hugs, and you can vote on stuff, and you can enter giveaways using your credits in the chat room. So that's what it's for. Also, fun in games. It's for, you can use it in the games. You can play heists. You can try to pull off heists in the chat room, like I'm finna do here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. Anyways, yes. No, I don't want to fight you. I'm done fighting you. You dance better than me, and your muscles are about a 1/4 inch bigger than mine, so I'm done fighting you. I don't want to fight you no more. Big muscles. Big muscles. Farrah's got some big muscles, guys. And gals. So if I were you, I'd leave her alone. Farrah looked at me one day. She was like, "You want some of me too, old man?" I was like, no. Organic Payment Gateways launches new service dedicated to topical websites. Organic Payment Gateways launches new service dedicated to topical CBD websites. 8 CBD products designed to make you look and feel better. What? What? See? Makeup. Out of the blue. I bet this company, I'm not going to say that I bet, but there's a big chance that this company came like out of nowhere and started making these companies, like a lot of these companies probably weren't even making health and beauty products before CBD was legalized, and now all of a sudden they're like, hey, let's make a buck, Chuck, and they started Dram. I'm just playing. Dr. Kirkland's natural CBD sleep cream. So you put it on your eyelids right before you get ready to go to bed and you pass out. I'm just playing. Don't put it on your eyelids. Use as directed, please. We got CBD soap from Leaf with 2 E's. Not Ocean with 2 C's, but Leaf with 2 E's. Leef. Nooks and crannies CBD soap. I guess it's supposed to put some CBD on your skin. I don't know. They got some not pot dietary supplement gummies or something of that nature. Hey. Got the CBD and little emojis. Anyways, Be Calm, Juna. Wait a minute. That says Juna nude. I see nude right there. What? I'm just playing. Herbivore. Nice play off the name. Herbivore. Anyways, Emerald. What's this? Lloyd Jones is something. I imagine they'll talk about these products down here. Big Mood CBD drops by Dram. $94 for 1,500 milligram, 3 milligram drops. $94 for this little bottle of tincture. It's amazing how much money there is in the cannabis business and how many people are jumping out of the woodworks to get their cannabis. Natural CBD sleep cream. Citrus and lavender with melatonin, fast absorbing. So you add CBD on top of melatonin, yeah, you're gonna really pass somebody out. Wait a minute. You rub it into your temples, not your eyelids. Your temple, neck, and shoulders. What? So, how much is that? $40 for 2 fluid ounces. Let me put a little CBD in that. $22 for some black chamomile cannabidiol blend CBD soap. Is there anybody in the chat room that will pay $22 for a bar of CBD soap? I'm curious to know. Anybody? Anyways, I don't know if I put this link in the chat or not. Copy. I couldn't get nobody to do a heist in the chat room. What are you guys doing? Sleeping? Is the news boring you? Do I need to do some crazy stuff? Are you guys ready to smash some fruits? I'm just playing. Not pot dietary supplements. Vegan, strawberry flavored chill pills are made to be taken daily as a way to show your endocannabinoid system some love. Not pot vegan CBD gummies for all my vegans out there. If you want to have a mellow out man day, mellow out man. Maybe you want some not pot dietary supplements. You get 30 gummies for $39.99. That's a little over $1 a pill. Hey, $1 a CBD gummy. Denise says, I think $22 is too damn much for a bar of soap, man. Yeah, I love my skin, but not $22 a bar, 5 ounces of bar soap. That's like $4.25, $4.50 an ounce for a bar of soap. Good Lord. Anyways, they said if you make it, they'll buy it. So I imagine there's folks. No, I'm good. I'm good, son. Just like I'm not spending $40 on some CBD gummies. You know how many one-a-days I can get for $40? I'm just playing. What is this Lord Jones high CBD formula bath salts? Why is there like stringy shit on there though? $65 for 12 ounces of Lord Jones's high CBD formula bath salts, a favorite brand among many. They've just launched these new bath salts, handmade with pink Himalayan salt, arnica magnesium, rich Epsom salts, oh snaps, calendula petals, and more to help your body relax and give you a sense of calm in the bathtub. So all you guys, I guess, and ladies out there, if you want to use some Lord Jones's high CBD formula bath salts and you got $65 laying around, so try some. Check them out. We got this Deep Moisture Glow Oil from Herbivore Emerald. $58. will get you 100 milligrams of CBD plus adaptogens. Another beloved brand, Emerald CBD oil will soothe dry, irritated skin that is in need of calm and relief. So if you got $60 and you ashy as fuck out there, go get you some Herbivore Emerald CBD lotion. You know how much petroleum jelly? You know how many jars of Vaseline I can buy for $58? I could take a Vaseline bath for $60 and never be ashy again for the rest of my life. But somebody said, you know what, I'm gonna put some CBD and some baby oil together, and we're gonna mix it together. We're gonna call it Herbivore Emerald, and we're gonna sell it to people for $58 for this. I don't even know how many ounce jar this is right here. It's ridiculous. If you guys are gonna buy, look. I'm not trying to make fun of any of these businesses by any means. I'm just pointing out like I'm poking fun a little bit. I ain't gonna lie, I'm poking just a little bit of fun. But if you're gonna buy CBD products out there, make sure it's from a trusted company. Try to buy it from a company that actually is doing something to help. You know what I mean? Just not fatten up their pockets and fill up their CEOs' yacht tanks so they can go to Peru for the weekend while we sitting up here scraping, trying to get a nickel and dime, robbing Peter to pay Paul. They flying from here to Dubai and back on our CBD dollars. So y'all, for real, make your dollars be spent wisely. Let's see what this product is right here. Juna drops nude hemp phytocannabinoid rich PCR drops $75 for 30 milliliters. That's 30 doses, 31 milliliter doses. Clear, connected, and balanced. I want to know why it's nude hemp. Like, did they make hemp with clothes on it? Like, is there a new Donna Karan hemp out that just for the winter season? The new Donna Karan hemp. Anyways, Juna drops nude hemp oil, phytocannabinoid rich. I guess that's what PCR means. Phytocannabinoid rich. Drops $75. Daily drops that aim to keep you clear, connected, and balanced by activating your internal receptors so they release the body's stressors. So this is like a 2.5 month, 2.5 months worth of drops. Assuming you do a drop a day, 30 days in a month on average, yes, about 2.5 months worth of CBD drops from Juna drops. Yes, man. Anyways, the Calm Patch by the Good Patch. They're putting CBD in transdermal patches, $12 for a patch. Perfect for the CBD novice who wants to gently slide into the realm, $12 at a time. These transdermal patches will help you unwind and decompress at the end of a long day. So, while being cheaper than a massage, is $12 a patch really? Would you guys pay $12 for a CBD patch? Anybody in the chat room? Didn't you go? Wait, you didn't go to the Hemp Week. The new launch is marvelous. Hemp Week. Did I go to Hemp Week? I don't even know. I jumped on the CBD train way back. I paid $55 for a bottle of vape juice. Total waste of money. Yes. There's a smoke shop that I visit on occasion when I go to my post office box, and they sell CBD damn near everything. CBD tinctures, CBD concentrates, CBD wax. Excuse me. CBD vape juice. They're selling this stuff like at dispensary prices. A gram of CBD wax in the smoke shop, $69.99 plus tax. For some CBD concentrate, dabs, wax, whatever. See, yeah, okay. $70 a gram for some CBD. Anyways, $12 for the patch. It's cheaper than a massage. and it claims to unwind and decompress you at the end of a long day. So there's a lot of CBD items out on the market. This is 8 products designed to make you look and feel better. 8 of the numerous, oh my gosh, I wonder how many CBD products are on the market right now. I'm still amazed at how overnight CBD was legalized. And here months later, the FDA is trying to catch up. Like, wait a minute. You guys can't sell this like this and this. And Canadian woman faces lifetime ban after getting caught with CBD oil at U.S. border. I want to read this. I never really got the whole gist of why, if you come into the States from Canada, and you have the cannabis on you, we talk about 86ing you from the United States. You can't come back to the U.S. no more. That's crazy. This is from CBC. I don't know if that's the Canadian News, the Canadian Broadcast Corporation, something like that, CBC. There seems to be a lot of confusion with Canadians entering the U.S. with regards to CBD, lawyer says. At border crossings, no cannabis à la frontière. At the, wait, no, what? Which one of those words is frontier, border crossing, all in frontier? I don't even know. Anyways, a sign near Grensa, Manitoba warns travelers not to cross into the U.S. with cannabis, shot October 16, 2018. U.S. Border Protection has barred a young Canadian woman for crossing the border after cannabidiol was found in her backpack, a non-psychoactive product of the cannabis plant she used to treat the painful side effects of scoliosis. The woman, who is asked not to be identified by CBC News pending the outcome of the application for re-entry, is the latest Canadian to face border troubles after Canada legalized cannabis last year. Thousands of Canadians have been denied entry to the U.S. simply for admitting they've smoked a joint once in their lives. Are you fucking serious? Here's where I am, ladies and gentlemen. Thousands of Canadians have been denied entry to the U.S. simply for admitting they've smoked a joint once in their lives. Others have been banned from entering the country for life for carrying cannabis products at the border. A punishment that is unsuspecting, a punishment that this unsuspecting CBD oil user could now face as well, according to immigration experts. Are you serious? So you're going to tell me more than half of the United States has legalized either cannabis for recreational or medicinal purposes, and you're trying to ban Canadians for coming into the United States with a little bit of cannabis? What if you're in Canada coming to Washington, and I mean, those are 2 legal places to partake in the cannabis consumption? You're going to ban me from leaving Canada, coming into Washington with some cannabis? I can't come to the States no more? I wonder whose idea this was. Thousands of Canadians have been denied entry for admitting they smoked. Did I read that already? Yes, I read that already. While some of the United States have dismantled prohibition, cannabis possession remains a criminal offense federally, and like heroin, cannabis remains a controlled substance under the United States federal law. The U.S. border is, of course, governed by federal law. Travelers are prohibited from carrying cannabis and its related products over the border even after the federal government in Washington removed industrial hemp from the list of controlled substances in December 2018. So, Washington, which is Canada's neighbor, attempted at least to remove the red tape around the situation so Canadians could come into Washington without this being hassled. But evidently it has had little to no effect. Pulled over for a secondary check at Blaine, Washington crossing last week, the woman said she was asked by Border Patrol officers if she had any leafy greens on her person. The officer did not say the word cannabis, she said. I said no because to me leafy greens is like marijuana, the actual bud, things that you smoke, recreational drugs. I use CBD daily. It's not psychoactive. It can't get me high at the doses I've been told to take it at, she told CBC News. A search of her possessions turned up a bottle of CBD oil, something she thought was perfectly legal to carry over the border, considering such products are legal in both BC and Washington state. I didn't think anything of it. I just always have had it on me because I take it daily and because of his wording, leafy greens. I didn't fully understand that I needed to declare it, she said. I know that's right, sister. Fucking leafy greens. What the hell is that? No, I don't have any cabbage or broccoli on me, bro. Leafy greens. There's no collards in my bag. No mustard greens in my leafy greens. A simple oversight en route to friend's cabin could result in a lifetime ban on entering the United States for this woman, said immigration lawyer Lynn Sanders. So yeah, she was going to see her friend. She had her medicine on her, and now the darn United States don't wanna. You gonna ban this lady from coming over here and helping boost the economy and everything else? She gonna come over here and spend some money, man, and all that other good stuff. It's crazy. Anyways, if you guys want to finish reading this story, I think I put the link in the chat room already, but if I didn't, here it goes. If you're in Canada, I know I have some Canadian viewers. Please do not come to the States with no darn cannabis, okay? Get it while you're here. Don't bring that shit with you, because I would hate for you not to be able to come back to the States because you done brought some cannabis and the damn guy asked you if you got some leafy greens on. You got some leafy greens, guy? And you say no, but you got some of that wax in your pocket or something. I don't know, but you guys be careful entering the States with the marijuana products, the CBD products, all of that stuff. Be careful out there because we don't want you to get violated by the government for owning a piece of nature. Having a piece of nature on you. I've been seeing this a lot lately. I don't know why, but I guess I'll read the story now because I haven't read the story yet. This is in Teen Vogue magazine. I don't know why it's in Teen Vogue magazine. What in the fuck do teens need to know about Texas, Florida, and Ohio being amongst the states that may have accidentally decriminalized marijuana? An unintended consequence of legalization of the hemp has left law enforcement scrambling as pot cases get dropped. So yeah, maybe this rolls back into they're having trouble funding tests to differentiate cannabis from legal hemp at the moment. There's not a cheap enough test out there for law enforcement agencies to purchase at the moment so they can do quick, efficient cannabis or hemp tests. You know how, like, if you get pulled over and police think you got some cocaine or some methamphetamine or something, they got those little plastic baggies. I mean, at least that's what they show on TV. I don't know. I've never been around hemp. I mean, not hemp, but I've never been around meth or cocaine or never been pulled over and never had them test me for any drugs of that nature. But that's what you see on the movies. They put the little powder in the little baggy thing, little bubble, whatever plastic shit. They shake it up. If it turns a certain color, you bust it. They don't have that test at the moment for cannabis, and if they do, it's evidently too expensive for law enforcement to purchase and equip their law enforcing officers with at the moment. So they're dropping a lot of cannabis cases right now. Some states are charging people, yet letting them go until they can test the product that they got pulled over with. So if you really had some weed on you and you said, hey, this is hemp, and you're in one of those states where they can't test you, they might have gave you a ticket or something and let you go for a little while, but as soon as they can test that product, if it comes back and you had the reefers instead of the hemp, you're liable to go to jail. So be careful out there, ladies and gentlemen. Please be careful. Anyways, this year, I know I don't want Teen Vogue. This year, at least 3 states have effectively inadvertently decriminalized the possession of marijuana. Florida, Texas, and Ohio all have passed laws legalizing hemp and CBD. In the process, they made it practically impossible for law enforcement to arrest people for possession of all forms of cannabis. This is taking place all over the summer. According to Dallas News, Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott, is you related to Dank by any chance, Greg? I'm gonna mess with Greg. I'm gonna mess with Dank next time he come here. Tell your Uncle Greg down there in Texas to stop. Just playing. Greg Abbott signed the bill legalizing hemp production and CBD products on June 10th. Florida Politics reported that the Republican Governor Ron DeSantis signed Florida's hemp program law on June 25th. Ohio's bill legalization hemp and hemp-derived products like CBD was signed by Republican Governor Mike DeWine on July 30th, according to Dayton Daily News. Since then, law enforcement in all 3 states have scrambled to figure out how to continue prosecuting marijuana possession. So they stuck their foot in their mouth. They legalized hemp. And now all of a sudden you got all these dope boys and cannabis growers / sellers and everything else. You just tell the police it's hemp. How they gonna know? They ain't got no test right now. Ain't no alcohol, breathalyzer, blood test to see if this is cannabis right now. So they can't test it. You could have the dankiest of the dank, some 30% THC, 0.01 CBD shit. How they gonna know? They don't know. They don't know. So now everybody's just got the reefers and they're running around getting cases dropped or put on the back burner until testing is available. Testing is available. The volume is kind of low. Driving and listen, but it's low on my end. I want to swing by and give you a virtual hug. Hey, Lisa, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for stopping by. Let me give Lisa a hug in the chat room. Is the volume kind of low? It's probably this fan on in the background. Lisa G. Well, I'm probably about like 6 feet, maybe 8 feet away from both of my exhaust fans in my grow areas, so they can get kind of loud in the background. And although I have a noise filter on my microphone, I don't think it works all the time, so yeah. All right, it all began with the 2018 Farm Bill, which the Brookings Institution notes legalized hemp for commercial production. According to the National Conference of State Legislators, at least 47 states have passed some kind of hemp legalization, often drawing from the Farm Bill to set legal limit of 0.3 THC. According to the National Conference of State Legislators, at least 11 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized recreational marijuana for adults. So, this is what is classified as legal hemp. Any flower that contains less than 0.3% THC. So less than 1/3 of 1% THC in your flower. But as of now, like I said, you could have some 30% THC flower in your possession, and they have no way to test the content of THC or the THC level in your particular product at the moment. They don't have any on-site testing like right there. Of course, you can send your flower in and get it tested at labs, but those are labs that take a couple days, couple hours, whatever, to get your results in. Here, it's a different story. law enforcement doesn't have the equipment yet. So I guess they've been letting a lot of people go right now, or putting them on hold. As explained in depth, look nationwide trend NBC News. The problem for law enforcement is that the law stipulates the difference between now legal hemp and still legal marijuana is the concentration of THC, the intoxicating chemical contained in marijuana. Now law enforcement officials are trying to figure out how to pay for expensive new testing necessary to determine the THC levels in cannabis plants. So, why don't you have all these businesses that can now legally sell CBD and hemp products? Why don't you put a little tax on their business since they're making all this money and let that tax go to your testing equipment if it's something that you guys are really concerned with? I don't even know. Local tax, state tax. If cannabis or hemp is legal, yeah, put a hemp tax on that shit and let that money go to good stuff like law enforcement and schools and building roads and shit. I don't know, but you guys shouldn't be scrambling for money. Wait a minute. The fact that you're scrambling for money in general, just to me, is like overwhelming because the law enforcement agencies around the world take in more money than it's necessary half the time. All the money y'all take from them drug dealing boys, I know from personal experience because I have had monies taken from me. I forget what they call that shit, civil forfeiture or something of that nature, where they can, yeah. If you walking around with too much money and the police feel like taking it, they feel like they have the right to take it. Especially if you can't prove, like if you don't have a paycheck stub. If you walking around with $1,500 in your pocket and you ain't got a paycheck stub, where I'm from, the police snatching that shit. It's gone. They consider it drug money and they will take it and probably go to the strip club with it. I don't know what they do with it, but yes. If you guys want to read more on this story, I've been talking about this for a while. So it's not really super news, but I guess the news is starting to catch up with it a little bit. Texas, Florida, and Ohio. If you live in either one of those states or you know somebody that lives in one of those states, you got a grandma, an uncle, a friend, a smoke buddy, a gromie that lives in Texas, Florida, or Ohio, you might want to pull this article to their attention. They probably already know if that's where they live at. That's probably in their local news. Your boy, Roy Boy, what's up, man? Yeah, I've been approached by a couple of CBD companies, and it's weird. The Amazon companies want you to purchase the product, and then they claim that they will refund the product. They will refund or give you a refund after the product has been reviewed. So I'm assuming that they want you to purchase your product, give a positive review, and then they will refund your money, assuming that they like your review. If you don't have a positive review, though, I don't imagine they'd give you your money back. I don't know. I'm not paying for anything to review. If you want me to review something, send it to me and I will give my honest opinion about it. If you don't like my opinion, don't send me anything else in the future. But I'm going to keep it real. I'm going to keep it honest. I mean, isn't that the whole point of a review? Like, if you send me a vape pen and I see flaws in it that your R&D team didn't see for some reason, I'm going to let you know that your R&D team sucks and you need to fix your product before you come out with a new version of it or something of that nature. I will tell you that. If it works great, fuck yeah, 5 stars. I'll give you 5 stars. But if it's a 4, 2, 3-star item, a 1-star item, I'm going to let you guys and gals know out there. But yes, I'm not, nor have I ever been caught up in the CBD hype, so I'm not one of these people that are out here paying astronomical amounts of dollars and monies to feel like I'm getting some miracle cure or something. I'm not going to do it. But there are a lot of people out there that's getting the wool pulled over their eyes, and a lot of them are the same people that have that reefer madness stigma or awareness, or I don't know. Anyways, came in to chat a bit. That's what's up, your boy Roy Boy. Appreciate you coming through, man. We just sitting here talking about some cannabis news, stuff that's going on in the world with the cannabis right now. I'm up way too early. My daughter woke me up to take her to school. Like, school hasn't even started for my daughter yet, and she's at school practicing something. The tuba, or what else did I say she wanted to play? Well, she's played the tuba, but her band teacher wants to know if she can play the, what did I say earlier? The trombone, I think. Trumpet and the trombone. Excuse me. I don't know if she can pull it off. More power to her. Why illicit marijuana sales are up in states where it's legal? Because the dispensaries are ripping people off and their weed is crappy. That's why. I can answer that for you without even clicking on the story. 5 more cannabis pharmacies. Home delivery could be on up consideration in Utah. Home delivery. I wonder how many people actually take advantage of that. I remember calling. I ordered some cannabis to my residence once, many moons ago. It was pretty nifty, just clicking and then purchasing and paying and right to your house. It's like Uber for weed, man. It was crazy. Anyways, I don't purchase cannabis all that often, so when I do, I usually go out because I want to see it. Because I'd be mad if... Quick question for the chat. You purchase some cannabis online. It gets there. You're not satisfied with the quality. Do you send that shit back? Or you just take it? You just take it. What do? Do you send it back? Or do you just take it? And for those that have been in, those of you that are in red states, so to speak, have you ever turned the weed man away? Have you ever called the weed man and be like, dude, I need a quarter? Then he gets there and it's that Reggie Miller. And you don't want it. Like, dude, I don't want this shit. So you turn them away. Have you ever turned your weed man down? Like, dude, I don't want this. Or would you turn a home delivery driver away if they brought you some cannabis that was not up to par with your standards? What would you do? What would you do? Food Forest Permaculture says, unable to send back, no returns. Dang. Your boy Roboy says, depends on how dependable they are. Not going to happen. Black markets matter. Well, me personally, I used to be not a merchant. Anyways, I used to sell weed. And there's been plenty of times that I done sent my connect back a pack, and I don't want that shit, partner. You can go get that to them other side people or something. Go take that shit over there. When you get some new shit, you can come back and mess with me, because my money likes to spend itself on good product. So yes, I have turned down the dope man. I've turned down my connect. Along with other, look, there's been plenty of times where I went to buy a sack and I didn't like what, no, I'm good, bro. Sorry. Anyways, it's happened to me before. I mean, I've had people when I was selling weed that would come and be like, nah, I'm good. Because every once in a while I'd have something that they just wasn't used to or just didn't want. Whatever, you don't want it, cool. Somebody will buy it. It's going to sell. I ain't tripping, pimping, buy. Come back next time. But yes, it's something that I have done and have had done to me as well. So it's crazy. Grosse, Medman, Grosse, careful, sir. Careful, sir, what? What do I need to be careful for? I'd say sorry, but this shit looks like garbage. They could be hiding top shelf for those who know and pass the booth for the weekend warriors. Mr.SparkzAlot says Grosse says Mr.SparkzAlot. All pot shops have been closed and the dank was taken by the cops with guns. No place to buy weed in Victoria, BC, Canada, and most other places. Government shit weed only. I was going to say, yeah. In Canada, don't you have to purchase your weed like online or something and then they send it to you? Kind of like our government still produces cannabis for a couple cannabis patients out here. I think they grow it at Mississippi State University, if I'm not mistaken, and they send it to them. I was in the chat room. It's been a while ago now, but one of the guys on the panel was a recipient of this government-grown cannabis, and he says he never gets anything that's fresh, like never. It's always like old, crappy bud. And I guess it comes in like those old cookie tin, round cookie tin type, and they're already rolled up already and whatnot. But yeah, it's weird. The government doesn't care because the government's not consuming it. On top of the fact that they claim that they don't have the knowledge, or they haven't been able to do the research on growing to make better medicine or whatever the case may be. The government don't care, man. If they're not making no money off of it, they do not care. In the mail only, FFP says. That's crazy. Well, FFP, if you're up there in Canada, man, please do not bring any product across the U.S. border because they are banning Canadians from setting foot back in the U.S. if you bring any type of cannabis-related product through our borders, on top of any possible jail time you might face. But yeah, don't get kicked out of USA for bringing weed here, because we have weed here. Just find somebody with it here. It'd be a whole lot safer than trying to bring some. I know it can be rough at times. You're like, man, am I going to be able to find some weed when I get to... You ever travel to a different city? You ever travel to a different city and not be able to find no weed? No, I'm just playing. For real, for real. Don't get busted on the border with no cannabis. It's not the business. The government medical marijuana program supplies a few patients still, but they also deny it has medical quantities. What the fuck? Yes, along with owning patents that says it has cancer curing properties. We all know, Grosse, this is the world that we live in. This is the world that we're raising our kids in, and this is the world that we are leaving our grandchildren. This is your brain on drugs. This is our life, man. My question is, what's going to be done about it? Is anybody going to do anything about it? Are we all just going to sit back and be like, fuck it? Let the grandbabies deal with it. Let my kids deal with it. Let my great-grandkids deal with it. It's not my problem anymore. I don't know. Oh, snap. Y'all know what that means. That means that Pakalulu Perks is in the building. What up, Pop? That's why I stick to hashtag #FuckALot. #FuckALot. AJ Groves is in the building. What up, AJ? Shout out to everybody in the chat room. I love y'all's. 9 people in the chat room. Let me give out some credits. Some points. Points. Add. Oop, I put too many eyes in there. Points. Add. Plus viewers. Plus the viewers. 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 9 million credits for the 9 viewers in the chat room. Chilling out, hanging out, doing they dizzle for shizzle, my nizzle. Boom. Anyways, so what were we talking about? We were talking about the government and cannabis. We were talking about home delivery for a little while. I got kind of sidetracked. Unlicensed marijuana vaping products eyed in 21 lung disease cases in California. California. We got a lot of Californians in the chat room, and I got a lot of California subscribers. And California is almost like the Hollywood of the pot scene, so to speak, along with a couple other places. Washington's got some pretty good cannabis businesses in Colorado. Look at this shit. Was those some Mario dank vape bullshit knockoff vape carts that I've been telling folks about for the longest? Stop buying this bullshit on the streets, man. Does that say West Coast carts? It's got an alien on it. Who the fuck made this packaging, man? Anyways, the California Public Health Authorities are investing 21 bank day uno cases of severe lung disease that appear to be connected to vape and unlicensed cannabis products and may be a part of a larger outbreak that has sickened at least 150 people around the United States de Americas since June. We read a story earlier that said about 100 people have been hospitalized across the U.S. This says 150 people. That's 150 people too damn many. Y'all stop vaping this old weird stuff that they're putting in these carts. It's not clear what exactly is causing the illness, but in California, the victims have vaped cannabis or CBD oil not long before they got sick, according to the state public health department. In King County, a rural Central Valley county where 8 people fell ill in July and August, public health officials collected recently used vaping products that were purchased from pop-up cannabis dealers that were not licensed by the state. Pop-up cannabis dealers. So those underground sessions that y'all going to buying shit from people that's like backdoor, yeah. Have to fly, Sparks, fellow Earthlings. Peace out. Sparks, peace, not war. Spread peace, not war. For sure. Double FP. Appreciate you being here. Food, forest, permaculture. If you haven't hit that thumbs up, please make sure you do so before you leave this bad boy. The victims have developed severe lung illnesses that was not caused by an obvious infectious agent such as bacterium or virus, and required good Lord, let me start this sentence over because it just feels so choppy. The victims have developed severe lung illness that was not caused by an obvious infectious agent, such as bacterium or virus, and required aggressive treatment, including ventilation. Many of the patients have been teenagers and young adults. There have been no deaths. So, nobody's died, but it's messing up a lot of people's lungs right now. 59 new cases were reported in the last week alone. Nearly 1 in 3 teens in Santa Clara County have tried vaping. 33% of the teens in Santa Clara County have tried vaping. Pneumonia outbreak, everyone purchasing from these pop-ups, referring to unlicensed. That seems to be the similarity in all the cases. Though recreational cannabis is legal in California, underground market exists, or you just can buy cheap products that are not licensed by the state. For real, licensed cannabis products are tested at state-certified labs for pesticides, solvents that are used to extract THC from cannabis, heavy metals, and vaping devices, and disease-causing microbes like E. coli and salmonella. The state has set limits on what kind of foreign matter and at what levels are acceptable. People just think it's cannabis. It's a plant. How much risk can there be? Said Myron Renee, Chief Executive of Bell Costa Labs, a licensed cannabis testing lab in Long Beach. Long Beach? Within the underground market is potentially a high risk for pesticides and other contaminants because it's not tested. You got Beavis and Butthead along with the Breaking Bad crew in the basement baking batches of cannabis concentrates. You don't know what's in that shit, man. Protect your lungs, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to read more on this story, if you live in California, if you know somebody that's got popcorn lung from vaping that shit on the street, maybe you want to get over there and check that. Give them some information. There goes the article right there. Stop vaping untested stuff, guys and gals. I don't even really think it's the adults that I should have to talk to. It's these kids that are trying out cannabis for the first time. They think it's cool to vape. Oh, look, I'm vaping in school. The teacher can't see. The teacher knows what you're doing. Plus, you fucking up your lungs. Stop vaping underground shit, man. It's nasty. Reminding me to spray outside with peroxide. Shit thanks grows a powdery mildew spray. You're not using the milk no more, Pop? Peroxide and water. Helps for powdery mildew as well. Powdery mildew and milk. Milk and water. Peroxide and water. A hemp headache for county committee. Medical marijuana sales top 6 million in Arkansas. What? 6 million. Marijuana makes your brain more plasticky. Plasticky? Get the fuck. Is this a word? Plasticky is not a word. Please tell me that plasticky is not a word. Let's go back over here and see. I'm going to ask Google here in a minute because I don't think that plasticky is a fucking word. Tell me this is not a word. I mean, I get the concept of the word. Is plasticky a word? Wow. Suggestive or resembling plastic. Plasticky. Wow.
Plasticky.
All right. Plasticky. Dude, it's all plasticky and shit. Anyways, yes. That's the word for the day, guys. Plasticky. So, plastic is not usually a word people would associate with their brains, but they should. When it comes to your brain, being malleable is a good thing. Neuroplasticity is the broad term used to describe how our brains reorganize its connections for our benefit. Marijuana, aka cannabis, aka Mary Jane, aka ganja, aka cannabis, can increase this. The brain's neural connections are like an incredibly complex roadmap. Even before you were born, your brain worked to create new pathways to communicate with itself and the rest of your body. Scientists have long recognized that this plasticity is stronger in the brains of young people than those of older people. This is why learning a second language could be easier for children, because it's easier to learn languages when you're a child. However, our brains continue to be plastic in varying degrees until we die. So, go play golf with your buddies on the weekends and show them stuff on your cell phone, and then take selfies. Take pictures in front of the lake, all while using solar panels. I don't know what kind of video this is. Maybe it's an investment video or some sort. Dude, let's go play golf. Anyways, academics and physicians have pondered the idea of neuroplasticity since the 1800s. Neurologists later determined that the brain's blood flow is directly connected to neural activity. Busy areas of the brain need more glucose and oxygen, so they get more blood flow. This is why certain music can give us chills. Thanks to a process called functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, scientists can now see the changes in brain blood flow to measure the brain's activity. Fortunately, these days we tend to ask, can cannabis help? Yes, it seems so. This is particularly true in relation to the brain injury, where neuroplasticity is key to recovery. Holy shit. Does this mean, I'm just going out on a whim here, but does this mean if somebody is in a coma, if you blow them a shotgun or two a day, they might be able to wake up out, snap up out that shit? It's a curious thing. What do you guys think? Is it worth a try? If you had somebody that was medically considered to be not necessarily, I don't want to say brain dead, or maybe so. If you had a brain dead relative that was living on life support and you could afford that shit, and somebody was like, dude, just blow him a shotgun, man. Blow him a shotgun, or send him some vape smoke through his IV or some shit. I don't know. Would you guys try it out there? How many people in the chat room would blow their loved one a shotgun to see if it will help with their brain functioning abilities? I would. If my grandpa or grandma or somebody that I love was sitting on their their hospital bed and they wasn't likely to make. Yes, blow them a shotgun. Just blow it to them. If they're not gonna make it, then they're not gonna make it. But at least they'll feel that much more at peace. I don't know. Researchers have shown that a single low dose of THC helped protect rodents from brain damage and continue to help for 7 weeks. Low doses of THC. Patients with THC in their systems are less likely to die from traumatic brain injury, not to mention less likely to die during hospitalization. This is in the Chicago Tribune, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to read this again. Patients with THC in their systems are less likely to die from traumatic brain injury, not to mention less likely to die during hospitalization. It is also believed that cannabinoids can stimulate protein enzymes in the area of the brain associated with memory, planning, judgment, personality, balance, excuse me, and attention. I'm going to read that again. It is also now believed that and personality, balance, and attention. So, it's not just a traumatic brain injury. The reputable Salk Institute has contributed to a growing body of research to show low doses of THC reduce plaque-forming proteins also associated with the reputable Salk Institute has contributed to a growing body of research that shows that low doses of THC reduces the plaque-forming proteins associated with Alzheimer's disease. So, smoking can help you fight Alzheimer's. Or not fight, but maybe it's a preventative. I'm looking up the cost, so get down, get down. Man, that's like fired up. Or did you quit Mr.SparkzAlot? Dude, I quit. I don't even smoke, bro. Do you even smoke, bro? Do you? Do you even smoke, bro? No, for real, man, I don't smoke anymore, but I don't smoke any less either. So, yeah, we'll smoke, bro. Just for you, man. This bowl is going to be for you. I don't even know if it's loaded up or not, but I'm going to hit it and see. Cheers. I got a little bit of bone water on my whistle. My lippity lips right there. That was kind of nasty. Anyways. So. What I just got from that statement is if you love your grandparents or your mom or dad and they're getting kind of old and you don't want them to start forgetting shit, maybe you should give them low doses of THC on a daily basis. Just slide it into their breakfast or some shit. Put it in their coffee. I don't know. Get some can butter and slather their toast up in the morning every breakfast. Like, here you go, Mom. That way your mom will remember you for the rest of your life. She won't get the Alzheimer's. But like, who are you? I'll be like, Mom, I came out of you. You don't remember me? How do you not remember me? I came from you. You don't remember me, Mom? Here's some bud. Oh, son. Yes, son. I'm your son. Hit this again. Shit. Whoa. Good morning, Google user. Partly low says partly cloudy. What's up? Google user in the building. Google user partly cloudy. Secret garden. Long live the queen. Cheers, guys. This bowl is for Paca Low. Cheers. Pew, pew, pew to you, guy. Pew, pew, pew. What? I didn't do it. Capriati's. I don't want to go to Capriati's today. I'm broke. No Capriati sandwiches. I got turkey in the refrigerator. Although Capriati's turkey sandwiches are pretty bomb. Pew, pew, pew. So, THC reduced plaque forming protein associated with Alzheimer. It effectively reduces inflammation and helps the brain neural cell death, helps prevent neural cell death, preserving the brain's ability to be plastic. In addition to holding promise for people suffering from traumatic brain injury and early onset dementia, this function of cannabis is also of great interest to people with post-traumatic stress disorder, aka PTSD. Cannabis is believed to be effective for people with PTSD because neuroplasticity helps the brain to forget the trauma more than before and allows the brain to rewire connections of learned fear, reducing hypervigilant nightmares and night terrors. So, if you smoke the cannabis, it can help you forget because it's got fuck it in it. Remember? Fuck it. The bills to do, rent's late. My wife's having another baby. The dog's pregnant. Billy's being bullied in school. And I gotta go buy a shotgun because all the kids in the neighborhood likes my daughter. Everything's going crazy, but I'm finna fuck it. Everything's fine. No, I'm just playing. For real, for real. This is scientific research being done. And it says it can help out with dementia, Alzheimer, PTSD, nightmares, hypervigilance, night terrors. I just think everybody around the world should smoke a joint all at the same fucking time. Just everybody smoke a joint at the same time. Anyways, if you want to read this story about cannabis making your brain... Wait, no shit, I didn't mean to do that. Go back. Cancel. Close. Go forward again. Chicago Tribune. Marijuana. Plasticky brain. So yes, if you want to read more about your brain getting plasticky, get over there and check that out, man. Chicago Tribune. It's a great little read. Don't forget, play golf with your buddies on the weekends if you have time. Cannabis restaurants are coming to California with bud tenders and flower service. Ooh, shit. Why y'all didn't show me this story right here, man? Don't make me come to Cali just to get medic. No, I'm just playing. I could probably make half this shit in my own kitchen. Chef Andrea Drummer shows the caramel corn s'mores and ice cream sandwiches she's tested for the new Lowell Farm Cannabis Cafe, West Hollywood. Like any good chef about to open a restaurant, Andrea Drummer wants to get her pairings just right, but her lamb chops with plantain mango salsa won't be matched with beer or wine. Instead of bud tender, some in the industry call them ganjiers, as in ganja sommeliers, will help guests at the soon-to-open Lowell Farms Cannabis Cafe part their farm-to-table meal with the perfect strain of farm-to-table cannabis. So no wine, just cannabis? What about if you get cottonmouth? A kush is a little bit more pungent, so it pairs better with a stew or something like beef or a meat product. A lighter lemon profile goes nicely with the fish, said Drummer. One of her favorite strains, Blue Dreams, pairs well with both savory and sweet. I've done it with ice cream and bread puddings. I've also done it with octopus. So Blue Dream Octopus. Holy snaps, Blue Dream Calamari. Get it, son. When a rustic plant-filled 220-seat space opens, it will be the first of its kind in America. A place for locals and tourists to have a high-quality meal and smoke a joint in public. Other restaurants are soon to follow, but hers shall be the first. If you're not first, you're last. Second is the first loser. I'm just playing. But if they want weed on the menu, restaurateurs in the famous Progressive City, which in 2017 approved an ordinance allowing business licenses for this purposes, will still have to navigate the complicated patchwork of regulations. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's a lot. A lot. Anyways, I'm gonna give you guys the story if you want to go check out Lowell Farms. Let's go back. Copy. Paste this in the chat room. Boom. Soon I will have feminized seeds to all my strains. I'll Jibby Bean with everything. Very soon. What's the name of this again? Lowell Farms Cannabis Cafe. If anybody's in the West Hollywood area and they get a chance to check out this cafe and wouldn't mind documenting it, let us know what you think. If I'm ever in West Hollywood, maybe I'll check it out. Oh my gosh, there goes the lamb chops. Jerk lamb chops with the mango chutney, and it's edible. Ooh. High scores, consumption lounge, 10 bright area oasis, tableside flower service, cannabis on hand, cannabis bud hand rolled into joints, menu infused food, never been making for years, private chef, Chelsea Handler. What? Chelsea Handler be baked. She be cooking for Chelsea. Chelsea like, girl, make me some of them pork chop, them lamb chops with the mango chutney. You know, the ones that make me so hot. See, the problem with edibles is they make you more hungrier. And if you just keep eating edibles and you just keep eating hungrier, you be hungry, you get the munchies, and oh my gosh, it's like a never-ending munchie trip. I'm hungry. Eat some munchies. Okay, I'm full. But no, I'm hungry again. I'm lost. Anyways, what the marijuana thinks of California, the industry thinks of governors California since taking office. Wait, I'm so lost. What the marijuana industry thinks of California's governor's performance since taking office. That's a whole lot, a lot. Let's go back over here. Of course, they gave me the idea for having films on hand. Thanks for that idea, bro. I love you for so many reasons. Alert on weeds. One weed, please. How much for one weed? Oh my gosh, I want to read this story just for shits and giggles. So how much is a single serving of cannabis, ladies and gentlemen? Does anybody out there have cannabis? One serving? Anybody know what one serving of cannabis is for them? Dope girls. I don't want to see dope girls. I want to figure out what is... Oh, you guys are the dope girls. All right, cannabis may not be quite as common as Corona, but your summertime cookouts, not yet anyway. Oh, at the summertime cookouts. But chances are plumes of skunky smoke are becoming a more frequent fixture at your parties. After all, weed enjoys some sort of legality in more than half the country's states. That said, there are barriers to casual consumption that may make weed feel forbidding to first-timers. Many advocates and others working in the industry are quick to point out that despite the compulsive urge to draw parallels between cannabis and alcohol, the comparison is like apples and, well, broccoli. Nate Jerm in the building. Part of the problem for novice consumers figuring out serving size and method of enjoyment is far from obvious. In order to shake the plant stigma, it'll be crucial we determine some known points of reference that beginners can relate to. Just like we know a lager in the wake of a carbon-heavy meal will have a very different effect than the double IPA post-gym. Not all cannabis products are created equal. So what is one weed? Ask anyone who attended a state school and you'll unearth a bevy of terrifying tales of pot gone wrong. Pot gone wrong. A gravity bomb ripped from a rigged Publix brand store sports drink bottle that resulted in an impromptu involuntary 20-second nap. Wow. Pulling so hard on the stranger's pen at a show, they had to pep talk themselves in a filthy bathroom mirror with something along the lines of, no, your hands are fine. Eating an enormous cookie and getting so freaked out that they have to lock themselves in their bedroom watching the wedding planner in the desperate attempt to relax. Okay, maybe those are all autobiographical. Oh my gosh, who in the hell ate a giant cookie and locked themselves in the bedroom to watch Wedding Planner? That's crazy. That is a good question though. What in the hell is one dose of weeds? Does anybody know? I'm not gonna read this whole story. My mouth is getting tongue tied. I got cottony mouth. On top of that, my coffee's gone. Here goes the link to this story. If you want to know, read more about how much weeds, how much weeds is too much weeds. How much weeds is a single serving of weeds? Is there such thing as a single serving of weeds? Like, will they be able to determine that ever? A single serving. Maybe like a gram is a single serving, but then it's not necessarily like how much is a single serving, but more like the concentration level of THC in a single serving or something like that. It's kind of like the alcohol volume percentage on your beer and wine and liquors. The THC percentage should have a little bit of a heads up. It should be able to give a little bit of a heads up to the consumer, but not all products are the same. I don't know. Bluefin are outside of San Clemente right now. Pacololo. Y'all going fishing? I want to go. A single serving is how much you can personally tolerate comfortably. Yeah, but it's not going to be the same for everybody. 3 hits, back to back. Perfect dose for me. 3 hits, 1 hit, 2 hit, 3 hit nap. I'm just playing. So does that mean if you're in a circle, Groze, and the blunt gets around to you 3 times, if it comes around the 4th time, you're not gonna hit it no more? You're gonna be like, no, I'm good. Cheers, guys. Goodbeerhunting.com. 1 weed, please. /dash, whatever all that. That's a long address. But yes, there it is. I'm hitting it till I pass out. 3 is the minimum. Oh, okay, 3 is the minimum. Irish brewers spearheads Canadian cannabis companies drive into weed beers. Partnership helps weed recovery. Does legal weed put black market dealers out of business? No. Nearly every single person arrested for weed in NYC this year was black or Latin. That might be an interesting read. It did say nearly, right? This is from the Queen's Daily Eagle, which I imagine is a New York blog or something of that nature. People of color are still disproportionately arrested for marijuana, though the total number of arrests have decreased. Even as New York decriminalizes marijuana possession and the NYPD significantly curtails the number of weed arrests citywide, intense racial disparities persist among those who are arrested with small amounts of bud. Black and Latino, why does that say Latinx New Yorkers? Is that a typo? Should that be Latino or Latin? And why in the hell do we still have to be described as fucking color? It doesn't say black and brown people. It says black, like that's a race. Black is not a race, America. Fuck. Latin is a race. Black is fucking color. It's not a race. My gosh. Anyways, people of color in general accounted for 94% of all low-level marijuana arrests in New York City during the first 6 months of the year, according to the NYP arrest data compiled by the state. Now, you do have to keep in mind, I think this is bullshit. I think it should not be happening, but you do have to keep in mind that the police, it's not that Caucasians or non-people of color aren't consuming as much. It's just that the police are not patrolling their areas as much. So if the police run areas where there's a high crime rate, which is usually the areas of people of color, but a lot of it's got to do with the economic situation. It's fucking, what do they call that? Rabbit hole? Yes. It's a downhill effect overall. But yes, the police the areas where people of color are a whole lot more. So they are naturally busting a whole lot more people in general. I do not condone it at all, but I understand how it happens. I do understand how it happens. Anyways, the NYPD arrested almost 1,500 people for 5th degree marijuana possession or 4th degree sale for marijuana for January to June. 1,349 people were identified as black or Hispanic. So we go from Hispanic to Latin, but we're still black. According to the NYS Division of Criminal Justice Services, the state agency publishes quarterly reports on race and ethnicity data for certain felony and misdemeanor charges. Police Reform Organizing Project Director Robert Ganji said, the blatant disparity in marijuana arrests and other low-level offenses reflect concentrated policing in communities of color. That's what I just fucking said. They concentrate. They put a lot more police in areas of people in color than they do out in the burbs. So, if they had as many police in the burbs, as they did the inner city, the low-income areas, government housing, etc., you have just as many Caucasians locked up for the same offenses, but they don't put the police out there. So, it's crazy, man. Anyways, the reason is fundamentally where the police are deployed and what directions they're giving, said Ganji, who analyzes the reports with Crop. They are deployed primarily in low-income communities of color, and they're told to practice broken windows policy. There were 820 people arrested for 5th degree marijuana possession during the first 6 months of the year. 506 identified as African American, and 260 were identified as Hispanic by the NYPD. So still, African Americans are getting pulled over at almost twice the rate of Hispanic or Latino people of color. Of the 616 people arrested for 4th degree sale, 403 were black, African American, and 180 Hispanic. So still, that's more than twice as many African Americans were arrested than Hispanics. Now, I don't know what the population of African Americans compared to people of Latin or Hispanic descent compared to Caucasians. Like, I don't know the ethnic breakdown of the population of New York, but I highly doubt that there is that many more people of African American descent in New York than there are Hispanics or Caucasians. So it's not like I don't know. I don't know why we're getting pulled over. I mean, I do know why, but it's unacceptable, man. We need to police our police already. The most recently quarter report did not include marijuana arrest data for white or Asian offenders. The data notes white or Asian offenders. The data notes the NYPD did not record race or ethnicity for all data for all arrests. Research consistently shows that people smoke marijuana at similar rates across all racial and ethnic groups. The Legal Aid Society conducted a demographic analysis of their clients charged with 4th and 5th degree marijuana possession and found that Queens led the 5 boroughs in low-level weed arrests. During the first 3 months of the year, public defenders from the legal aid represent about half of the low-income defendants citywide. Unlike district attorneys in Brooklyn and Manhattan, the Queens District Attorney continues to prosecute low-level offenses though the offenses rarely result in jail time. So they still trying to charge people and make that money and bring that money into the state, the city or whatever for cannabis, even though they decriminalized it. They still pushing the issues. Borough President Melinda Katz, the Democratic nominee for Queens District Attorney, has pledged not to prosecute marijuana misdemeanors, which could discourage police in Queens from making arrests for cannabis. The racial disparities in cannabis arrests mirror the persistent disparities in fare evasion arrests. More than 85% of people arrested for fare evasion between April and June were Black or Latin. Why does it keep... What is the X in Latin? According to data published by the NYPD under city law. It's crazy, man. Stop locking up people of color for possession of this plant, man. If you guys want to read this story, there goes the link in the chat room. Papalolo, get your ass to work other day, otherwise have a good day. Black market bud makes way more than money than any legal shit. Main grower 420 says, "What's up, main grower?" In Cali, black market nug made $5 billion so far. How you know, man? Are you the accountant for the black market in the California cannabis industry? I'm just playing with you. But I know they probably done made more than that. Stop arresting our people of colors for the cannabises. Stop arresting anybody for cannabis in general, but stop putting people of color in the penitentiary / plantations that you have created for so many people. I don't understand how we have so much money for incarceration in the United States, but we don't have money for education. Maybe if you educate some of these folks, they will be less likely to grow up and get incarcerated because they'll know better. They did a study of Cali, Oregon, and Massachusetts. No one knows the black market numbers, especially out of border states, right? Right. Yeah, I don't think anybody has. That might be a projection. And the news be like yoking shit up. You'll read a news story and they'll be like $2 million cannabis bust, and then they'll be like they seized 50 pounds of cannabis and cannabis related products. Okay, so then you go do the math and you be like 50 pounds, $2 million. God damn, that's a lot. Who paying that much for a pound? Like, have you ever went and saw a news raid story, like a bust story, and the numbers that they project? Like, who in the fuck is paying $10,000 a pound for some cannabis? Where they do that at? Like, maybe I need to start selling again. No, I'm just saying. I wouldn't do that. But what I'm saying is, the news be lying. They be yoking up numbers and making people feel like that they be trying to do their job. They want you to feel some type of way about the cannabis. They want to push they agenda down your throat. 2 ounces on the table. Do some research and don't forget Fugu. Don't use Fugu or Gahu. Phoenix Tears is what Rip Simpson named in the cannabis oil. Angel Tears is a strain. I still have some combo of it from 5 years ago. Damn. Nobody posts the inventory and FIFOs coming through. FIFOs. Yes, Popo do be boosting like a mofo. I wish there was a cannabis bust news story within what I was reading right now. I could probably go look one up. Nearly every single person arrested for... that's what I just read. This legal weed put back. Okay, maybe we'll read this in a second. Too much weed, too little demand, the industry says in Eugene, Oregon. Too much weed, too little demand. Cannabis corpse unleashes the weed metal on selling massive. What? Oh, that's so what did I say I was gonna? Since we were talking about the black market, they shut down school here for police training. I don't use Google. I just drive the empty schools. Just drive by the empty school. What? They shut down schools here for police training. I don't need Google. Just drive by the empty schools. Our teachers are getting ready to go on strike out here. It's going to be crazy. Our school district started the school year off 750 teachers short. Don't ask me how that was possible. But yeah, the teachers we do have is getting ready to go on strike out here. It's crazy. Anyways, this is from the Inlander. This was published today. It says legalizing cannabis means less crime, right? With a question mark. It depends on where you are and how long it's been legal. I don't even think that matters. It really shit. Wherever it's been legal at the longest, they still have a black market. Believe you me, here in Washington, where cannabis has been sold legally for over 5 years, the black market has taken a back seat, but it's still making money. I don't know about it taking a back seat. In states that are more recent arrivals of legal weed, Party, however, have not. I mean, that's not yet the case. Last week at a border crossing in Cali, where legal retail sales began just last year, Customs and Border Protection agents seized a shipment containing over 7,000 pounds of marijuana. The story made the rounds nationally because the smugglers had attempted to conceal the marijuana by surrounding the packages with jalapeno peppers, aka jalapenos. So they put 7,000 pounds of cannabis with some jalapeno peppers, man. Oh my gosh. I wonder how much they said this bus was for. This says, what does it say, last week? No, last year. Oh my gosh. I want to do a Google search for this story. 7,000 pounds of marijuana. Google search. I bet we'll find a story relating to this. California last year. Police seized 1,000 truck, February 2009. Oregon. Colorado. Wait. Is this the same story? Okay, pen live, 7,000 pounds, industrial hemp, 8,000 pounds of marijuana looks like. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, this right here says 247 pounds of marijuana was seized and identified as having a street value. Something can fetch upwards to $5,000 to $7,000 a pound. Oh my gosh. Anyways, let me put it in California right here. California knows how to party. Nearly 4 tons of pot right here. Boom. This says 3 days ago. Okay, so 2.3. All right, now. Let's see how much they tend to exaggerate in the news. Nearly 4 tons of pot buried in jalapeno seized in San Diego. Why is this from 3 days ago? I thought that said like years ago, earlier. Last year, Customs. Last year. This is a couple days ago. Am I tripping? I'm not tripping. I don't even know. August 19th. So, whatever. Okay, let's go down here. I could have swore I saw a price in here. Very proud. Last night they seized, this says 7,560 pounds of marijuana. So wait a minute. Where'd that other 560 pounds of marijuana go? They say 7,500. They say 7,000. Somebody walked off. We got some high officers out there. But they done got rich. because the street value is so much. Let's go see how much. Oh my gosh. The shipment weighing more than 7,000 pounds had an estimated street value of $2.3 million. Oh my gosh, where's my calculator at? Hey Google, what is 2.3 million divided by 7,000?
The answer is approximately 328.571.
328.5. Oh my gosh, Google, you're stupid right now. Where's my damn calculator at? Calculator. So you got 2.3 million. That's 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Right there. Divided by 7, 1, 2, 3. Right there equals what? I'm so lost. That can't be right. 2.3 million? 100,000 million. Did I not do the math on that right or something? Is my calculator broke? Why does it say 328? No, it wasn't $328 a pound. Is my brain being stupid right now? Oh gosh. 7,000 pounds. Estimated $2.3 million. $2.3 million is 2,300,000, right? 2.3 million. Maybe that's a typo. Divided by 7,328.57. So you're gonna tell me that's less than $330 a pound? I can't. I'm lost. They use all the old schools here in Yuskin for training the cops. All of them drive by and all cop cars. No kids. It caught me. Taxpayer money, hard to work. True as they stay. Shooting notes. Local news and city shooting drill. Events. Over 1,000 dispensaries in LA, 200 have licenses. Let me go back over here. Am I tripping? Am I not doing this math right? $2.3 million divided by 7,000 is 328.57. Maybe it's too early. Do I need to go back to sleep? Are they telling me, did I do the math right? Ladies and gentlemen, is my brain working correctly? Is that $330 a pound? 7,000 pounds? 330. You had one of that. Yes. Wait a minute. Yes. Right? 33? What is 33, girls say? That's not how old I am. I ain't been 33 in a long time. What up, NASCAR? NASCAR! Fast like a NASCAR. NASCAR. Fast like a NASCAR. Fast like a NASCAR. Can somebody in the chat room verify that my brain's not acting silly? Is that right? 2.3 million divided by 7,000 is $330 a pound of cannabis per can. Is that right? Please tell me that's not right. Is my head messed up? Maybe I need to go get something to drink. Maybe I need to stop reading the news. Maybe it's too early and my brain's not functioning right now. Maybe I just need to take a rip. Maybe my calculator's broke. Can somebody in the chat room? Yeah, that's gotta be 7,000. You add a zero, multiply that by the 3. That's 2. Yeah, maybe that's right. Maybe my mind's not playing tricks on me. Where in the hell do they have $330 pounds at? What kind of weed is they smoking? Am I tripping, guys? Will somebody please talk to me? Please tell me I'm not tripping this morning. Is my math right? $330 pounds. I think I'm going crazy. $330 pounds. The seizure came days after more than 10,000 pounds were discovered in a shipment of plastic auto parts at the same point of entry. So 17,000 pounds of cannabis have been seized in California at a port of entry last month, Mexico. So they got some of that boo-boo. I want to see it. They put it in the red jalapenos, man. Jalapenos.
Officials in California say they seized $2.3 million worth of marijuana mixed in with a shipment of jalapeno peppers. The huge bust happened at a border checkpoint in San Diego. Nearly 4 tons of pot was recovered and comes just a few days after an even bigger bust in which officials seized more than 10,000 pounds of marijuana. They say pot's black market is booming despite the fact that marijuana is legal in many states now.
Greenland isn't for sale. Trump cancels Denmark trip after Prime Minister says Greenland isn't for sale. Whatever. $330 pounds, man. Oh, I know, right? I bet all that trees, all the cannabis that's in that jalapeno shipment probably got a gang of jalapeno Turks in it now. The article cites an industry report stating that the black market earns $3 for every dollar spent in the legal market. It makes sense. I don't know if that number is correct, but I can imagine that there's more. But yeah, I still think the black market makes more money than the legal markets all day long. I got a lot of people that come out here. It's funny, especially when when I'm at work, there's a lot of people ask me, like, where's the trees at? Where the bud at? You know what I mean? And it's like, you do know way we live in a state where there's a dispensary on every other corner out here now. Like, there goes the weed. You go down the street, about a half a block, make a right, go up 2 blocks. Right there on the corner is so-and-so dispensary. Like, there's still a high demand. I don't know. I think a lot of people still have that stigma, like, where they don't want to go into the store. They don't want to go in the rec shop or the medical dispensary because you have to show your ID, and they don't know what type of records are being kept and all that other stuff. I don't know. Some people are still comfortable with that. They're bud man, you know, whether they're later on time or like clockwork, whatever. They're just confident in their bud man, and they don't want to go to the stores. On top of that, a lot of the dispensaries, I don't know. I've been in the majority of the dispensaries out here. I have not been to them all yet, and I have not tried like every brand out here, so to speak. But the lower budget brands that are out here, like, I'm not too impressed with them. So I can only imagine the people that are like pretty much obligated to buy the lower tier items in the dispensary. They're probably not happy with it as well. But then again, they might not know any damn better. They might just be like, all right, whatever. This is what I get for my $20. Cool. I'm gone for the smoke. That's all I need. Happy. So, in 2024, AP story notes that in 2024 estimates are for 6.4 billion in spending on the state's black market compared to 7.2 billion in the legal market. Well, if there's $3 for every dollar spent, is this because that's in the future and hopefully legalization will knock those numbers down? I don't know. If you guys want to read this story, I don't know if I put it in the chat room or not, but here it goes in the chat room right now. TX Canna, what up, man? True Patriot. True Patriot. Rose says, support your local farmer. They dispense in legal term, legal market dispense, regulated commodity. And who does regulation with the same folk that gives up fluoridated H2O? True Patriot says. Ladies and gentlemen, True Patriot in the chat room dropping knowledge bombs and shit. What's up, man? How you been, bro? It's good to see you in the chat room. I want to see what this is. I'm curious. It's a cartoon weed dude, but it's a metal band or some shit. I don't know. Metalinjection.net. Holy shit. Cannabis Corpse unleashed the weed metal on cylinders of madness with new cartoon. I don't know what that means. The weed themed metal band that manages to kick tons of ass and have loads of great song names will release their new album Nug So Vile on November 1st. The album was produced by vocalist and bassist Phil Hall and drummer Josh Hall, as well as Jared Pritchard from Goat Whore 1349. The band also just released a new song titled Cylinder of Madness with a great weed cartoon done by Josh. Nug So Vile is Cannabis Corp's first album with guitarist Adam Gilliams, who replaces Ray Sui from 6 Feet Under. Check out the album's fantastic track listing. Nug So Vile, Blunt Force, Domain, Cylinders of Madness, Blasphemy Made, Hash, Chiba, Jigsaw, Quandary, Edward's Autopsy, Down in the Weed Possession, The Cone is Real, Ultimate Indecantation. Freud Slave. What? I'm so lost. Oh my gosh. Does anybody know who these people are at Cannabis Corpse? Anybody in the chat room listen to Cannabis Corpse? I've never in my life seen this. I'm so tempted to watch the video right now. But I don't know. Cannabis Corpse. Friends shouldn't let friends buy state tax herb. I know. I would really love to just give everybody a clone to be like, here, go grow your own, bro. Here goes your start. That's all I can do, man. I don't want to sell you no bud. I don't want to, I don't want to give you no bud. I just, here goes a clone. Go grow your own. Jeez. Never heard of any of them. Do they even grow, bro? I don't know. Friends shouldn't I like that, man. Friends shouldn't let friends buy state tax herb. You should put that on a shirt, Rose. My local farmer feeds his kids that go to school with my kids. Where does the money spent at a dispensary go? I have no fucking clue, bro. They had a news story that was broken down, that they quote unquote broke down the financial situation of the cannabis tax money. Now, a certain amount of this money was supposed to get set aside or to go into the school's budget. Now, the way that the law made everything happen out here is supposedly, okay, say the government or our government sets aside whatever, X million amount of dollars for the school year. All right. They can put that money in there to the side out of their budget, and then say the tax money was more, they collected more in taxes than that budget called for. Anything that's over, they can put in other state-related budgets, like the other budgets that were mentioned in the law. But they're not obligated to leave that excess fundage or those excess monies in that account. So it's like if the budget is set, say at $200 million for the school year or whatever, then that's all that's going to be in there. They can collect $1 billion in tax revenue. All that's going to get set in that account is $200 million. The rest of that money is supposed to go here and there, and I'm sure it's lining up a lot of people's pockets as well. It's crazy. But that's what happens when people, like, I'm guilty because I just saw it, you know, the only part of the law that I don't know, I guess I'm like everybody else. You read the main thing, what they put in bold print. We don't read the whole bill or the whole law per se. And I saw legalized cannabis. Check mark, yeah, you know. The commercials that were out or the advertisements that were out at the time for legalizing said it that, you know, a lot of the tax money was going to the schools, and it does go to the school, but once that budget is set, it's like there's a limit on there, and I don't know. So yeah, the money that's taken for taxes out here is spread around in a lot of places, and sometimes it might be hard to trace in general. It's crazy, but I think it's weird. I've been to a couple of dispensaries now out here that are accepting debit card and credit card payments in a business where you're technically not allowed to do that. Like, you're not allowed to bank in the cannabis with the cannabis business. And I notice when I get my receipts from these companies, if I go somewhere and I pay with my debit card, that like the receipt on the debit card will be from a different business. It's not the business that I went to, so to speak. So say if I go to like SparkzAlot's dispensary, you know what I mean? And I go in there and buy something, I use my debit card. My debit card might say, I don't know, the Secret Gardens Cafe, or, you know, the Secret Garden Pub or some shit like that, or TSG LLC. You know what I mean? Like, my receipt never matches up to the dispensary. It's like the dispensaries have almost made like a shell company, or maybe that's another legitimate business that they have that they're quote unquote, I guess it's like, I would almost imagine that it's considered laundering money, but that's what they're like subject to do due to the fact that they don't want all that cash sitting around their business, man. You got all these people. I've never worked at a dispensary out here, and I really don't know what type of business they do in a day. But a lot of banks have like an armed guard around or in the bank throughout the day, or for the most part of the day, or security will be like on site, you know. A lot of dispensaries don't necessarily have that, or they might not have it in their budget to have a guard on site all day. Imagine having all that money sitting in your register or in the back of your store. That's a lot of money they got to transport because they can't take digital debit card, credit card payments. It's crazy. Anyways, it's almost like they're forced to break the law in order to maintain their business safely at the moment. I want to go to a SparkzAlot dispensary. Shit, I do too, man. Anyways, Cannabis Corps, I don't know who they are, but it was so tempting. I saw the little nug man right here. Anyways, how long I've been on here? 2.5 hours. I think that's an hour and a half, too damn long. I'm just playing. Boom, 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 doo, 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 doo. I think that's enough news. That's all the news that I have over here. at the moment. So we're going to turn this off. I think this will conclude this episode of Cannabis News with me, Mr.SparkzAlot. My throat is dry. I need to go get something to drink. My coffee's gone. My stomach's growling over here. I'm going to finish this bowl if it's not gone already. I think it's gone already. Damn it. Let's see. It was almost gone. Wasn't a big rip. But you guys, I appreciate everybody for being here. I appreciate you guys and gals for being here. I hope you learned something today. If not, I hope you laughed today. Oh my gosh, it's not even 10 o'clock yet. Boo! Pew, pew, pew. We probably missed like 1,420s. But I'm going to get up out of here. I do appreciate you guys being here. Like I said, I hope you learned or were entertained today. Because that's what I try to bring to you guys is infotainment. That's why I entertain and inform you at the same damn time. But you guys be good out there as always. Light up, toke up, blaze up, smoke up. If you like your concentrates, get your dab on. If you like your edibles, get your snack on. If I don't see you for a while, be good, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to say if I don't see you for a while, but yeah, y'all be good. Google user, Pakalolo, True Patriot, Rose, of course in the chat room, Farrah. I said Google user, TX Canna, Mr. J Rock, Rose, NASCAR's in the building. Main Green Grower. I don't know who else was in the building. You guys be good. Until we meet again, stay medicated. And grow your own shit, man. If you're from Canada, don't come down here with no weeds, because you won't be able to come back ever again. And I personally like Canadians. Want y'all to come down here. Don't bring no weeds with you. Just smoke our shit. Or send you... Never mind. I don't want to tell you stuff.